It's Cy Blackburn here, and I want to ask you a question. Have you ever wanted a way of generating high-ticket clients on autopilot consistently? Now, it may seem like a pipe dream, but in fact, the most successful coaches do it regularly. It's called a funnel. Now, if you're not familiar with what the term funnel is, or you have an inkling of what it is, but you don't know how to build a high-ticket coaching funnel for a coach, listen to the end of the video. Now, first we've got to define what actually is a funnel. Well, when you look into the definition of a funnel, it really just fits into three things. It's the process of building trust, credibility, and need. Trust means that they trust that you have something valuable to offer them. Credibility is that they believe that you're an authority in the space, and need is that they need your product. The need is built up during this funnel. Now, there are different funnels for different businesses, and there are different funnels which are more effective for one business versus another. And a coach has a very specific set of steps that they need to follow in order to create an effective coaching funnel. But before we go into those set of steps for a coaching funnel, I want to talk a little bit about a company which you may have heard of called Apple. Now, are you watching this video on an iPhone or a Mac? Well, let's talk about Apple for a moment. It was the first company in history to reach $1 trillion valuation. Now, how did that happen? From a company which a few decades ago was near bankruptcy to basically being one of the most valued companies in the world at one point. It was through a funnel. Now, how did this happen? It all started with the release of the iPod. When the iPod was released, it was a revolution. Nobody had ever heard of something like this, which could fit 1,000 songs in your pocket. Now, Steve Jobs knew he could create the software to work with the iPod, iTunes, purely for Mac, or he could go where all of his users were, which were on Windows. So he did something unheard of back then. He created a perfect jukebox for a competing system. He created iTunes not only for Mac, but for Windows as well. Now, ultimately what happened was people who started to use iTunes valued it so much that they ended up moving on and saying, you know what, if iTunes is this good in comparison to Windows Media Player, perhaps an iPod would be a great thing to buy. So it all started with iTunes. Now, from that point, what happened is iTunes created so much trust, so much credibility, and ultimately so much need that people ended up buying the iPod. From the point of buying the iPod, because of the way the symbiosis worked between iTunes and the iPod, believe it or not, back in those days, symbiotic relationships between hardware and software were effectively unheard of. Apple was one of the first companies to actually do it. And because this symbiosis worked so well, it ended up building enough trust and enough credibility in order for people to move on to the next thing, which is buying the iPhone. From that point, they have the iPhone, they have the iPod, they have iTunes, they're using these things regularly. And because they work so seamlessly well together, the simplicity is beautiful, people end up upgrading to the Mac. And from this point on, they become Apple fanboys. They absolutely love Apple, they rave about Apple, and then they end up spending their paycheck on Apple stock, which ultimately pushed up the valuation to what it is today. Now, this was a very simple funnel, but when you look at what Apple did over decades, they just kept on running this funnel again and again and again, and it was very successful for them. So when we look at a coaching business, what is the ultimate funnel which works for a coach? Well, let's get into that. The ultimate funnel for a coach is split into 4 different sections. The first section starts off as traffic. But traffic is effectively interested people seeing your content. Now, having interested people seeing your content is one thing, but you need to have a way of taking interested people and building up trust, knowing, and liking. And that's what you call conversion. Driving that traffic into a point which will ultimately involve a conversion, getting them to know you, like you, and trust you. Now, post the point of conversion, with high-ticket coaching, clients need that one-on-one connection. They need that personal touch. So the next point in the funnel for a high-ticket coaching business is the call. Basically getting on a phone call with them and enrolling them in the value of what you have and building up the need. And finally, from that point on, that's when you sell your program. So ultimately, the 4 steps to building up a coaching business, especially the funnel, revolve around traffic, conversion, call, and sale. Now the trick is knowing what type of traffic you should get, what type of conversion you should do, what type of call you should have. Because there are 12 different points of traffic you can choose, there are 4 different points of conversion you can choose, and some of them are ineffective and some of them are massively effective. We cover exactly what that is in another video where we talk about the perfect funnel for a high ticket coach.